We call this the universe. And I see the universe of all of my data sets and all of the links that exist between those.
Hi folks, Daniel Myers, Developer Relations here at Snowflake. And on today's episode of Powered By, I'm talking with Ross Lazerowitz, Head of Product at Observe, a SaaS observability platform built on Snowflake. Ross, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me in the studio, like in real life. This is cool.
I totally agree. It's cool to see folks in person again. And today's episode, I really want to learn more about you, your background, and what you're doing at Observe here.
Yeah, sure. Where should we dig in?
I'd say let's start at the top. When was Observe founded, and what are some of the big problems that you solve today for the industry?
Yeah, sure. So Observe was founded actually in 2017, and the founding VC was the same as Snowflake. So
That's
it's
awesome.
actually a really interesting model and this was the way that Snowflake was founded, where Sutter Hill Ventures will look at a space, get a conviction about it, then they'll go and pitch engineers on it and have them go found the company. So the first year of Observe was really like figuring out what are we going to build, right? What's the market? Can we use Snowflake, which will come into play later, and really just doing a lot of prototypes and kind of research. And then I'd say, a little over a year and a half ago, we came out of stealth mode and actually had our product out in front of people, which was like super cool.
So for our viewers today, can you kind of define a little bit, what does it mean to have a observability platform?
Yeah. So what's observability? The definition of observability is to understand what's going on inside of its system from its external outputs. So, imagine if I had a car and the car was telegraphing, its speed and how much fuel it had and how many people were in it. You could presumably build a model of that car somewhere, and then you could, in software, understand what's going on across a fleet of trucks or cars or whatever. That's what observability is about. So what Observe does is, I think it's really interesting. First, we go and we take any kind of telemetry or machine data. It could be log data, it could be trace data, metric data, build events, tickets, we don't care. If something has a timestamp, we'll ingest that into a single source of truth, which happens to be Snowflake. So we have this big table that we call the observation table. And that in itself is kind of unique because a lot of our competitors will kind of have all this data and they'll shuffle it into different silos depending on what it is. So metric data goes into a metric store, tracing goes into a special tracing database, and so forth. So we have all this data, and instead of just like giving you a search bar and saying good luck when you're trying to troubleshoot an issue, we shape the data into things you can ask questions about. So we have things like container logs, your servers, your users, containers, pods. And some of our customers like Topgolf, these are things like Topgolf locations or the individual bays that people are golfing in and taking orders from. So, we build this, we call this a resource model from all this data, and then we capture the relationships across those things. So, when you think about building software 20 years ago and now, a lot has changed. 20 years ago, we had servers with names after planets, and we could keep track of them. I could go in the server room and look at them. But now I might have a container that runs for 200 milliseconds and it's gone. So, being able to have that relationship mapping and go, oh, hey, what happened to that container 2 weeks ago? Where was it running? What was it doing? Is really, really important. I think Snowflake allows us to pull a lot of this stuff off that I think a few years ago kind of seemed impossible.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty powerful. And I really like some of the analogies that you provided there. To really clarify what a observability platform is. You mentioned Topgolf. What other customers are you working with today?
Yeah, sure. So Topgolf is a great customer. Tripwire, they're a security company. We're working with an unnamed cybersecurity company in some of our security use cases that are nascent. There's a financial services firm called Line Data that we work with, and I think we're about 35 customers, 32. I got to double check.
That's awesome. So, one of the things I always like to see on is a demo, right, of how it's working and how is it being built on Snowflake?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to hand it over to Tom Batchelor, who's our field CTO, to run you through Observe.
Awesome.
Let's dive into a demonstration. So here I am in Observe. I see some of my important data sets that I have from me here. So I have things like app logs, but also things like customer. And we'll come back to some of these in a second. One of the key properties of Observe is that we're able to bring all of our telemetry data, whether that's logs, metrics, traces, or build data, or Zendesk tickets, or whatever that may be, into one place. And let's go ahead and take a quick look at an example of that, which really starts with my observation table. As I pull this observation table up here, all the data that comes into Observe, it all lands in this table, and as it's all in one place, we can then structure it from there. But of course, that begs the question, well, what's in here? Well, if I take a quick look at this column, I get these different kinds. So for example, I can see I've got Kinesis data coming in from Amazon. I have OTel data coming in from my tracing. On HTTP, I have log data from my case from FluentBit, metrics from Telegraph, and things like build data and ticket data coming in through webhooks. So having all this data in one place, well, could we go and dive about in here? Well, we can. Let me just go and do a quick search for error, and we'll see what comes back. Now, what Observer's gone and done is dutifully come and told me all of the observations that contain the word error. But there's still a lot of data in here. It's actually pretty difficult to go through this, which is why we build data sets on top of this. So let's take a look at those. So I open up my index page here. Here I see a list of all of my data sets. And the neat thing about data sets is they're about things. And it's things that people tend to ask questions about. And it's, having these things that's helping people like line data getting 70 or 80 users into the platform on a weekly basis. I have Kubernetes, so I have things like pods and containers. I have my Kubernetes estate that runs on Amazon, so I have data sets around things like EC2 instances and load balancers. Of course, that all exists to support an application. So I also have things like customer, application logs, users, etc. Now, these data sets, they don't sit in isolation. There's relationships that sit between those. Rather than using tagging, which at scale gets difficult to maintain, you have to have a knowledge of your tag structure, we pull these together using foreign key, primary key links. So let's take a look at what that looks like on a visual basis. So if I hop over to my dataset graph here, we call this the universe. And I see the universe of all of my data sets and all of the links that exist between those. And if I zoom in here, I can go and take a quick look at one. And for example, I can kind of go and pull up pod here. And if I pull up pod, I see that links off to lots of other things, but they in turn link over to other things as well. So let's dive through that a little bit. So if I focus in on pod, I see everything that that's connected to. Of course, I can go and now follow some paths. So I can think, okay, well, a pod is composed of containers. Well, a container contains images. And this is where things start to get a bit interesting, because image is actually linked off to Jenkins. And before I click further, we see we have a little breadcrumb here. But let's kind of follow that through. So if I now go into Jenkins builds, well, why did Jenkins builds get started? Because somebody made a commit. And then how does a commit happen? Well, that's made by a user. So if we look at the path we have down here, let's say we had a pod that was hitting issues, it was poorly performing or maybe erroring out. We can now see a direct correlation path to who made the change to that pod that introduced it into my estate. And we will revisit this in a little bit. Now we've gone through the tour, let's get into a bit of a use case. Now, why do we typically come into tools like Observe? We don't sit there watching dashboards waiting for something to go wrong. It's usually because we had an alert. So let me hop over to my Slack channel over here and look at the latest alerts that we have. And we'll notice here, I have error for customers in logs as my alert. And this is back to the graph link that's linking that data together, and it's a subtle use case for it. What I'm not saying here is I have lots of errors in my logs. What I'm really saying is I have a subset of customers who are experiencing a high error rate, and those customers are going to be unhappy. So let's dive in and see what's going on. So when I hit view notification, this is now going to bring me up the view of that alert that we have in Observe. And as a SaaS company ourselves, should something go wrong, we would have two main questions. One question is what broke, so we can go and fix it. But of course, just as importantly, it's who's impacted. What's the blast radius of the problem that we have here? Well, that first question is answered for us right away. I see the list of customers that are being impacted by this issue. I can maybe contact customer success or my support organization. Maybe there's actions they need to go and take on the customer side. Now we have that out of the way, we can start to dive into my issue. So let's go and take a look. I'm going to click Monitor Dataset. What Monitor Dataset is doing is it's going to show me the log that led to that alert getting generated. And so if I look through here, I see I have this, this out-of-memory alert that's occurring over and over again. And that's curious, because that could be a code problem, that could be a memory leak, for example. That could be an infrastructure problem, that could be maybe resource contention, or maybe something's undersized. We don't really know from the logs, and we'll dive into how we get into that pretty quickly. Notice here that I've kind of got more links here. So whereas before we saw the customer who was impacted, now using the session ID, we're actually linking back to the individual user who kind of faced this error. I have links off to things like my tracing data. I have things like stack traces in here, and I can go and have a look at those. Although I myself, I'm not a developer, so I don't really fully understand what they mean. And then if I go over to the right here, we then start to get kind of a sea of these contextual links that really help people get into this. And I want to diagnose this out-of-memory error, and I want to figure out, like, is this infrastructure, is this a code issue? Well, the easiest way for me to do that is to go and have a look at the infrastructure, which in my case is pods, and go and look at some metrics for those. So I can just click here and ask Observe to say, hey, can you just go and show me the pods that generated these log lines? And that's what we'll pull up here. And it's simple actions like this to be able to click through the graph very easily and very naturally. That's helping people like Audit Board reduce their MTTR. Okay, so now I see my pods. I have a couple of hundred pods in my environment, but I just see 3 that I have up here. These are the 3 that were generating those log lines. And if I scroll back here, I can see that, okay, so they kind of came in a little bit ago, and they're running here. To get that out-of-memory error, I probably want to go and have a look at some memory metrics. Well, that's very easy, because everything's linked in context. I just get the metrics right here. I don't have to go into another tool and copy-paste an ID or pod name around or something like that. I don't have to hope that I have the right tagging in place where those get pulled up for me automatically. And then I go and see, look at this. Classic Java sawtooth pattern. I see memory climb up, and then we have the restarts, and it drops down. We might want to go and validate that. Take this honeycomb. So maybe on this honeycomb, we want to go and overlay a restart count. And then we can scroll back and forth, and we can see, okay, yeah, these pods are kind of restarting over and over. Now, from an SRE perspective, I might think this is a great day at the office. In about 3 clicks there, I've identified as this particular car's deployment. I can probably open a ticket with that team, say, hey, you folks, you've got a memory leak. Can you please go and take a look? It's customer impacting. But in my case, we're doing CI/CD. We're using Jenkins in this case for CI/CD. So could we go a step further? Could we get down to that individual change? If you recall when we looked at that universe map, we did that click through and we built that path. Well, we actually don't need to build the path. One of the magic of GraphLink is it will figure out the path from A to B for you. It's like satellite navigation. So if I hit this GraphLink button, I know I have Jenkins, so I can type Jenkins in here. Oh, Jenkins builds. All right. Can I go and see connected Jenkins builds from those pods? Well, what's happened here is Observer's figured out a path for me. So we have pods are composed of containers, containers run images, and images are built by Jenkins builds. So now I see that correlated build. I actually have that connected to my Git commit information as well, so I can drill into my Git commit and go and see, take a look at exactly what changed, but we'll hop back. The critical thing here that really helps accelerate that mean time to resolution is now I know the person who made that impacting change. So now rather than opening up a ticket with a team where they're going to probably re-triage themselves, even though I've given them a starting point, I can go to an individual and say, hey bud, that cache code change you made, looks like that it's got a memory leak and that's customer impacting. Can you please go and take a look at that? So that really helps tighten that loop and get to resolution quickly for our customers. Now let's go a wee step further. Of course, we have a support organization, and they will have had tickets. And that ticket information also comes into Observe. Now, I'm a little bit tired of support escalating things to me and asking me to go and take a look at stuff all the time. What if I can turn the tables on that and say, hey, we found an issue, we know who's impacted, by the way, these tickets, they might have been open because of that problem. Again, we could use GraphLink, and this time I'm going to say, I want to go and have a look at Zendesk tickets. And what happens here is we open up these Zendesk tickets, and I have this complex path, but all we're saying is we did a build, that build ended up running and generating logs. Remember when we saw the logs, we had the session ID mapped to the user, and then of those users who hit that bad build, which ones open tickets? And then we go and see these tickets here, and I can go and send this to support and go and take a look. So before we move on, just a quick summary. Remember, we got that alert. Using GraphLink, we understood which of our users were impacted by that alert. We were very quickly able to diagnose to the impacting change, and also able to go to support and explain to them we found this problem and we think we have a solution and we should be able to take care of that pretty quickly. Now, you might be thinking, that's great, but you've got all this prepared demo, you have all these data sets, that looks fantastic. How does that work for me in the real world? Well, of course, things like AWS, GCP, Kubernetes, GitHub, Jenkins, Jira, etc. All these things are well defined, and we have a good understanding of these things, and all these data sets come out of the box. Now, there will always be a whole bunch of application-specific stuff, and let's look at how easy it is to go and create those data sets by taking a look. Let's rebuild the Zendesk tickets that we have here real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my observation table. Remember, this is where all of that data comes in. I'm going to take this back. I'm going to pull back the last 4 hours of data to make sure I definitely go and get some tickets. So we go and have a look, and we see we kind of have this data here. Now, the first thing I've got to do is I have to go and find the entries that relate to Zendesk. I don't really know exactly how to find them and how they got assigned and different things like that. But no matter, I can just go and do a field search. So let me just do a quick search here, and I will search for, let me search for Zen. Hopefully it says Zendesk is somewhere in the payload. Oh, here we go, /Zendesk, perfect. I'm now going to go and hit apply. We're just going to filter down on those things that had /Zendesk in them. And look, here we go, we've got some JSON payloads in here. And if I take a look at these, this looks like a JSON payload for a Zendesk ticket. It's got a ticket ID, it's got a title, it's got a priority in it. So let's go and extract some things out of there. If I hit extract from JSON, Observe gives me a dynamic JSON schema, so I can very easily just go and pick the fields I want. So we'll pick these ones that kind of look important. We'll hit apply. And now here I can see I have what looks like a table that represents JSON tickets. Excellent. Well, what do I want to do now? Well, it's all well and good having it like this, but the power of Observe comes when we link information together, so let's go and do that. So I'm going to click on this ticket creator. This looks like my users, and I can just say, hey, I want to go and link to users. Hit apply. And now look, this comes back, and now we see this column. The green indicates that this column is now linked. Now we have this link, we can go and use it. In our scenario, we have these tickets. These are opened by users and accounts, but those accounts have a tech owner that's internal. Be useful on the ticket to know who the tech owner is for this account. Well, if we click on here, we could then go and add related fields, and a user belongs to a customer has a tech owner, so let's just go and add that tech owner and hit apply. And now look, I have this new column indicating the tech owner. Of course, I may want to explore the graph a little bit more, so let me kind of go and take one of these users, and maybe I want to go and look at their web access logs. I want to get some context and see what their user's been doing. Well, I just click here, I ask to go and have a look at web logs, and again, we build up that path, and we go and we get into their web logs. Now, one final thing. I just want to pull up my console here. All these interactions we've driven through, we build all of this using the UI. There is a query language that sits underneath this, and of course we're not stopping anyone coming in and using that query language. But it's getting that UI interaction is really helping people like Styra continually onboard users to the platform and reduce their MTTR. By making it easy for people to get at the data, you don't need to be an expert in this language or this tool, and developers don't want to be experts in monitoring tools. They just want to go get at the data they need.
Awesome, Ross. So that was an incredible demo. I loved the graphical view to be able to kind of deep dive into the data, right? Visual aspects of that to me really provides a good frame of mind for how to even like conceptualize the data that you're ingesting and getting from all these logs and things like that. So it's really cool to see. What is on the roadmap for this product that you just showed us?
Yeah. I think there's a few at a high level. There's a few different kind of areas in investment, and one of them is doubling down on our distributed tracing capabilities. We have a lot of the plumbing in place to work with trace data and span data, and we do that today. But we want to build some of the more visualizations people are used to, like waterfall diagrams and service maps. We have a lot of customers that have been pulling us into the security domain. So they look at our platform and they go, "Whoa, you have all this data. Some of that is my security data, like flow data from AWS. can you help me do security like stuff? So we have a bunch of customers that are kind of proving us out for that use case, which is really exciting. There's also a few Snowflake features we'd like to expose. So one of them is data sharing. I used to work on a product where we tried to do what's called business service management or monitoring, which is basically like, all right, I don't want to just monitor whether or not my database servers are running. I want to know like the business KPI they're impacting. And one problem we had was that the team that was running all the monitoring tools had nothing to do with the databases. So we go to the DBAs and we'd say, hey, can you put all this data in this other platform? And they go, no, like it's in a relational database. I'm not going to put it into a text index. So one cool thing that we've done is because we're putting all of the machine data, all the telemetry, into basically the BI store, if we could share that data in, a lot of things that Tom showed get really powerful. So like if I can share my user and customer tables, you can answer some pretty interesting questions. And this is something that like we have methods of doing today and we do internally, but we want to make that a lot more robust and expose that to all of our customers.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, it really seems like a perfect fit for Snowflake. You mentioned earlier, being able to remove those data silos. It seems like data sharing is a powerful aspect that you want to do for your product as well. That kind of ties into my next question, which is, what was your decision criteria? Like as you were building this product and this platform, how did you land on Snowflake?
So this is a bit before my time, but I kind of know the spiel. Collectively, our founding engineering team has decades worth of experience building databases from scratch. So choosing Snowflake was a non-obvious decision. Here are these hardcore database people, one of whom was one of the early engineers at Snowflake. When they first set out to build Observe, an open question was, could we use a cloud data warehouse to do this? And at the time, no one had put this amount of time series data into something like Snowflake, right? A lot of the BI people always get kind of blown away when we talk about the scale of some of our smaller customers. A medium-sized customer in Observe right now is doing 7 to 10 terabytes a day of data being shoveled in. And there's way more to come. So the team built a bunch of prototypes to solve those different use cases, to just test the platform and see if we could do it. And they realized that they could do it, and it would greatly accelerate our time to market, because we could spend all the time iterating on the end user-facing features and that value, rather than getting a new sort operation to work for 3 years. It would have taken us probably 10 years to build this product if we had gone and built a database from scratch, which is really our only alternative, to be honest.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So time to market was a big impacting factor. And you mentioned some of the features like data sharing earlier. Yeah. So that's the decision criteria. How did you actually go about evaluating Snowflake in that regard?
Yeah, so they went and they built prototypes for these use cases to test them out. And they saw all right, where does this fall over? Can we live with those trade-offs?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so, for this product, what is an area that if somebody wants to learn more, right, either about you or about Observe, where should they go?
Yeah, I'd say our website's a great resource. That's observeinc.com. There's also a pretty good YouTube playlist. We like to do a lot with video, so there's a few playlists from our 2 last launches that we'll talk about product. There's demos there, interviews with our founders, and a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, that's exciting. That's exciting. And for all of our viewers here, this has been another episode of Powered by Snowflake. And if you want to learn how to build your application and your business on Snowflake, check out developers.snowflake.com. Thanks.